Coming up on the Locked On Mariners podcast, Colby and I will look at the aftermath of the Rule 5 protection deadline yesterday and determine if there are any interesting players who either went unprotected or were DFA'd to make room for the players who were protected. Plus, the Mariners might have a new hitting coach on the way. Talk about that. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. This is Trident Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today over at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. Thank you so much for making us your first listen, subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. And on the show today, we're going to look at the aftermath of the Rule 5 protection deadline yesterday. Who are some players who went unprotected that the Mariners could select in the Major League portion of the Rule 5 draft next month? And were there any interesting players who were DFA'd to make room on their respective teams' 40-man rosters? Plus, it looks like the Mariners might be on the verge of adding a new hitting coach. We'll tell you about that a little later on. But let's start here with the guys that were DFA'd. Were there any interesting players who were DFA'd yesterday, Colby?
I don't know. I was hoping you would figure that out. Honestly, just the one that really caught my eye is Cal Quantrill from the Cleveland Guardians. Former first-round pick. He was actually picked a couple spots ahead of Kyle Lewis in that draft, which seems crazy to say. It seems like that was not very long ago, but he was DFA'd yesterday. He was bad last year. Pretty good September, but overall just bad. He's your classic back end of the rotation guy. He'll give you innings, but he's going to give up hits. He's going to, not strike out a ton of guys. His runs allowed metrics, not ERA, are traditionally in the 4s, like right in that range. But he has had some success. He has a track record of eating innings, which we know Seattle kind of needs with the questions surrounding Wu and also the health of Hancock and Gonzalez and effectiveness of those two, kind of up in the air. But yeah, he's a strike thrower. He's not going to walk a ton of guys. He's not going to strike out a ton. He's going to pitch to contact. He's going to give up hits. He's going to give up some runs. But throughout most of his career, he's produced ERAs of, number 4s, like number 4 starter stuff. But the stuff is a number 5 starter. You look at FIP and XFIP and all that stuff, it's mostly number 5 type of numbers. And he's an arm, right? He does have a couple options left, a couple minor league options left. Yep. However, $6.6 million is what he's projected to earn in arbitration this upcoming year. That's a lot for right-handed Marco Gonzalez, or as we can call him now, expensive Emerson Hancock. Same thing. So is it likely that anybody's going to claim, a number 5 coming off of a bad year and pay him $6 million? No, probably not. But if a team is willing to claim him, it's probably not going to be Seattle. So you hope he clears. You hope he chooses free agency. I think he's got enough time that he can opt for free agency. I'm not 100% sure on that. And if he does, and he's willing to sign, like a $1.5 million or something like that, and with incentives, then that's a good guy to stash in your organization. You definitely have room on the 40-man. But aside from that, there really wasn't. I didn't see a ton go down, and even Quantrill is an interesting idea, but there's just not a lot of upside here. He is basically what you're hoping Emerson Hancock will be, but there might actually be a little bit more upside in Hancock right now than there is in Quantrill. So we'll see. But that's the one guy that I saw that really stood out. But even that, like at $6 million, I could probably do better.
Yeah, this past year for Quantrill, 99 2/3 innings pitched. He posted a 5.24 ERA, .479 FIP, 0.7 F4 was what he was worth. Just 524 Ks per 9, 316 walks per 9. He doesn't strike anyone out. But the year before, 186 in a third innings pitch, 618 Ks per 9, 227 walks per 9, 338 ERA, 412 FIP. He was worth 2 wins. It's a good pitcher, solid pitcher. And then the year before that, 149.2 innings pitched, 728 Ks per 9, 283 walks per 9, 289 ERA, 407 FIP. It's 1.8 F4. I mean, that's that helps. That's solid depth. If you're able to even get close to that, that would be solid depth to have. But just not at that number. So if he elects free agency, if he's able to, I don't know exactly what the situation is there, if he's able to do that or not. But if he's eligible to do that and he elects free agency, then I'm interested. But yeah, even if you're like, in arbitration, the arbiter is probably going to side with the team if they lowball him. But even then, that's probably still, you're probably still looking at $3.5-4 million at the lowest possible end. And it's still a little much for me, given what his role in particular would be in Seattle, which is essentially a stash play down in AAA. So again, if he hits free agency and there's a deal there that makes sense, then I'm into it. But otherwise, probably not. Outside of Quantrill, Dom Smith got DFA'd by the Nationals. He's someone that we've talked about a little bit, but that kind of feels redundant given that you did recently DFA Mike Ford. I think Smith is also out of minor league options as well.
Yeah.
I'll double check that real quick. But do you like the idea of Dom Smith at all?
Liked him a lot more when the team was rebuilding and they had at bats to give and they could take a shot on him. Smith is a guy who a lot of like prospect guys really liked. They thought the bat would play, and he's been, I think, painfully mediocre at the big leagues. If he's even at 100 WRC plus, first base only, really shouldn't be in the outfield. Again, if you're looking for org depth and you want to try and stash him in AAA on a minor league deal, sure, but I wouldn't give him a 40-man spot entering the year. If you want to give him one now, you want to claim him and just have him on your 40-man and bring him into spring training, fine, whatever. But honestly, I would have rather you paid Mike Ford the $1.4 million or whatever. But on a minor league deal, Smith is fine, but I'm not interested in claiming him. I don't know what his ARB situation is off the top of my head, but I probably don't want to spend a 40-man spot on him. But again, as org depth, maybe. Although you do have Evan White coming back in theory, and you want to give him at bats at AAA. So we'll see what happens there. But I like the idea a lot more like 2-3 years ago, before you kind of started to turn and before you started competing for division titles, or at least you should be.
Assuming that he clears waivers and he decides to elect for free agency, that's probably a solid candidate for a minor league deal and an invite to spring training. So at that point, I'm down. Like to me, there's no such thing as a bad like minor league deal, or
unless
bad,
there's off the
spring
field
training
issues.
Yeah.
But even baseball wise, that's not a bad deal. It's just PR wise and
right. Yeah,
all that stuff. But
I think that should go without saying. But
yeah. Did he have any options left? Did you check that?
It says not available on Fangraphs,
So
so
that
I'm
means
going
no.
to say no. Yeah,
No.
I'm going to say no.
Zero
usually it says 0 instead of NA, but so that's why I mentioned the difference there. But the safe bet there is that it's 0. And I mean, he's going back to his time in New York, he was going up and down. So it makes sense that he's out of minor league options at this point in his career. But yeah, again, if he reaches the free market, then minor league deal with an invite to spring training, I'm down for Dom Smith. Keep an eye on those two guys. Now let's turn our attention to the prospects that went unprotected from the Rule 5 draft. Are there any interesting names there for the Mariners that they could draft in the major league portion of next month's Rule 5 draft? We'll go over some names in just a moment, but first, a reminder: this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Jase Medical. We spend a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up together on wins and losses, who starts and who sits. And I'm thankful for that connection we have. But today, I want our chat to be a little more personal. I just learned that you can get a 1-year supply on ED medications. You realize what that means? Bring on extended travel. Bring on the next natural disaster or supply chain issue because you are covered, my friend. You don't have to worry anymore about whether or not you can refill your generics for Cialis, Viagra, or Revatio prescription. And this is possible because of our friends over at Jase Medical. Go online right now at jasemedical.com to receive your 12-month supply on your daily medication. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, at checkout for a discount as well. A verified customer had this to say about Jase. Quote, I am thankful for this service. Supply chain issues caused me to cut pills in half to have it. I ordered most of my daily meds with a year's supply, and I also ordered an antibiotic kit. Now I feel secure. Prices are lower than local pharmacies, and I highly recommend this for everyone. So, if you or someone you love will get some peace of mind by having a year's supply of any daily med, go to jasemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use the promo code LOCKEDON, that's LOCKEDON, $20 off your purchase. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And as a reminder, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, so a lot of guys got protected from the Rule 5 draft yesterday, and a lot of interesting guys were left unprotected from the Rule 5 draft. Before we hop into those names, some of you might not know what the Rule 5 draft is. So, Colby, could you give us a quick explanation of what the Rule 5 draft is?
Sure. We'll start with the fact that it's stupid. But essentially, any player who is 5 years removed from being drafted as 18 or younger, or 4 years removed from being drafted at 19 or older, they have to be added to the 40-man roster. Otherwise, they are eligible for the Rule 5 draft. So I think, what are we in this year? That would be 2019, I think, is if you were drafted as a college player in 2019, you have to be added to the Rule 5, or you have to be added to the 40-man, or you're Rule 5 eligible. Basically, the Rule 5 is it's a draft, it's the same order as the MLB draft next year. Teams don't have to take anybody. They can pass. Once they pass, they cannot make any selections for the entirety or for the remainder of the draft. It keeps going until the last team passes. So you can keep picking guys as long as you want. But once all 32 teams pass, or all 30 teams pass once, it's over. The rule on the Rule 5 draft is pretty simple. You have to pay the team that you are taking the player from. You have to pay them $100,000. And you have to keep that player that you select on your 26-man roster all year. You can't option him down. You can work out a trade, which is interesting. You can select a guy, bring him in. If you like him, but you don't want to keep him on the 26-man, you can go to that team that you took him from and work out some kind of deal, and then you can option him down. But until that trade is made, until you officially acquire that player, it's more or less you're trying the guy out. If you don't want to keep the player, he gets offered back to the team that you selected him from for $50,000. So it's only a $50,000 gamble on a guy. But the trick, again, is that you have to keep him not only on your 40-man all year, you have to keep him on your 26-man roster all year. And that is why most of the time these Rule 5 guys never pitch for the team or never play for the team that selects them. It's more and more rare that, anybody of significance gets to a Rule 5 situation. So it's really stupid. It's a way to try and prevent teams from hoarding talent at the minor league level and just, artificially keeping them down. But if you want to do that, you could just give them free agency, which they don't have until after 6 years in the minors. So, right. It's basically a scam. It's a nothing event for the most part. And the players that are available really don't carry much impact potential. And it's typically not something that a lot of teams, not every team will make a pick. Very rarely will more than, a dozen or so teams make a pick. But the Mariners always seem to make one. They always seem to make one pick at least. So yeah, it's just
Yeah.
something to keep in mind. None of these players that we're talking about here coming up, none of them are stars. None of them are potential like everyday players. Even you're basically looking for bullpen arms and
Yeah.
maybe
All of
some
them,
utility
and even
types.
the bullpen arms, they have flaws. So
Oh,
it's
big time. Yep.
yeah, it's just if you think there's something interesting here that you want to take a flyer on, because at the very least you get them into spring training, you allow them to throw a little
Mhm.
bit in front of you and get to work with
Right.
them a little bit on some things and maybe tap into some stuff there. But that's really just you're just taking a shot. What the Rule 5 draft ultimately is just taking shots on guys and just seeing.
Yeah.
And then like you
Just
said, if
you're
it doesn't work out, then it's not really that much of a loss for you. So
I suppose one thing that can happen is that you can offer the player back to the team, and they could just say no, you can keep them.
right.
But usually, what happens is there's a trade, and usually it's just cash. Past Mariners Rule 5 draft picks that you may have heard of: Will Vest,
Yep.
Rule 5 pick. I believe Brandon Brennan. You remember him?
Brandon Brennan. Yep.
I believe
Johan
he was a Rule
Ramirez.
5. Yep. So, they have had some guys stick. I think Johan stuck all year. Well, it was 2020, so he only had to stick for 60 games. But yeah, and then last year they took somebody from the Cubs. I can't remember his name, and they just gave him
Oh
back.
yeah,
So
Chris Clark, I think.
yep.
I think that was his
Yep.
name. Yeah.
So again, you're not looking for major contributors here in the Rule
Right.
5 draft.
So the Rule 5 draft takes place on the last day of the winter meetings, which is of course next month, mid-month. So keep an eye on the Mariners there because again, they usually take someone, and I don't think they've, at least in the Dipoto era, I don't think they've ever taken anyone other than a reliever. So I have like 4 guys that I kind of have my eye on. They're all relievers, but is there anyone that you are looking at in particular here?
Sure. I'll butcher some names along the way, so
Sure.
stay with me. CJ Van Eyck, I believe is how you pronounce his last name.
Yep.
From the Blue Jays. I remember him when he was coming out. I think he pitched at Florida State. Second round pick. I think second round pick. Had a Tommy John surgery, which caused him to miss, basically 2 years. But I do remember him having a really good curveball. It apparently flashed again in the Arizona Fall League. So he doesn't have a ton of innings under his belt at the pro level, but he was a college guy. He does have a plus pitch right now. So that's a guy who maybe the Mariners might have interest in trying to, sneak into their bullpen, or at least take a shot on. Right. Devin Mann is a kind of a utility guy for Kansas City. He was traded. He was traded from the Dodgers to Kansas City this year, and he can play all 4 spots in the infield. Fine, not great, but fine. And he put up really good numbers, 20 home runs. But it's a lot of mediocre skills across the board. There are swing and miss issues as well. So, is he better than Dylan Moore or Sam Haggerty? Probably not. So that's probably not an avenue that they're going to go. There is an interesting name, JT Ginn. You remember him?
Yeah.
He was a second round pick in the 2020 draft. He had a lot of round 1 hype, but he got hurt. And he really just hasn't stayed healthy. But, it's sinker slider. We know how much the Mariners like that, and there's a lot of upside there. Could they take him and then see if they can get him into the bullpen? Sure. Probably not, but they could. The name that I don't even know if I want to attempt this. Anthony Hoopy.
Oh yeah, he's on my yeah.
Tui Neota.
I think
We'll just call him AHT. How about that?
Yeah, Anthony Hoopy Tuio Natoa. I believe that's what it is.
Hoopy Tuia Natoa. Okay. Well, that guy from the Rangers organization actually pitched here in the state of Washington, Pierce Community College. He was a 30th round pick back when that was still a thing. But I've watched him some really good upper 90s fastball with some run at the top of the zone and a pretty hard, firm slider, which we know the Mariners will occasionally turn into a cutter. But not a ton of innings under his belt, but the stuff is legitimate, middle relief type of stuff. And the Mariners could take a shot on that. So, again, none of these guys are like that exciting or anything like that, but Yeah, those are three. There are a couple from the Rays that got left off, but for obvious reasons. Ian Seymour, lefty, but just I think like 15 innings over the last 2 years, like almost no work whatsoever. And then Cam Misner is a fun one, but there is a ton of swing and miss. And again, he's another left-handed hitting corner outfielder. Seattle has a lot of those on the 40 man right now. So
I believe Cole Wilcox is another guy.
Yep.
Yeah. But
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, so I had Hoopy Tui Natoa on my list as well. Who do you
Ian Bedell. Yeah, he is a pitchability back end right-hander whose stuff might play up in the bullpen a little bit. But yeah, he just throws a ton of strikes. Knows how to pitch, that type of guy. Pretty similar to Emerson Hancock. Just the idea, at least, of what we thought Hancock could be next year. So that's another guy from the Cardinals organization.
Right. So a couple other guys. Harold Torino from the Brewers missed most of 2023 with a torn lat, but nice sinker breaking ball combo. He struck out 22 dudes in 14 innings before getting hurt this year, just 3 walks. Cole Franklin is a righty from the Cubs. He got smoked as a starter this year and should be a reliever. Control has been wildly inconsistent, and his command of his fastball is pretty spotty. Has been hovering around 95 to 97 miles per hour. He dealt with an oblique injury a couple of years ago and just kind of hasn't really been the same pitcher since then. But I do wonder if he could tap into more velo if he just let him rip it. Nice slider as well. He's also the nephew of former Mariner Ryan Franklin, for those that care about that stuff.
Nice.
Justin Jarvis is a guy that came over to the Mets in the Mark Canha deal with the Brewers. Solid 4-pitch mix. He's a starter, but the idea here with the Mariners in particular is he would be a multi-inning reliever who provides some spot start depth. Really struggled with the walks this year, but his pitches have apparently continued to develop nicely in terms of stuff. So maybe that's an option there. Yeah, I don't really see them adding a position player because they've never done it. So I only focus on the relievers that were left unprotected, or starters that would probably profile better as relievers. So yeah, of the guys there, I don't know. I feel like Franklin might be the most interesting ball of clay because he also has a nice changeup from what I've read. So maybe, but again, this is about taking shots. If you like just a particular area of a guy's game here, take him in the draft and just see what you can do with him in spring training. And if you find some success there, if you find something interesting there, put him on your 26-man roster to start the year or work out a trade.
Right. And that's where guys like Hudson Haskins and Cam Misner, like I wouldn't rule him out entirely, but I'm with you. It's they're going to take a pitcher almost certainly. There's a couple lefties who I left off my list. I didn't write them down because I thought we'd only need 4 names. But and then there's one more for Arizona. Christian Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
Remember him? Yeah. He basically missed 4 years with some issues, off the field issues. He came back and had a nice, return to baseball, but there's a 0% chance you're carrying him. But if you want to take a shot and like put him on spring training, see if you can work out a trade with Arizona later and then, put him in, the problem with that though, is that he automatically goes on the 40-man. And while you have 40-man space, not sure you want to waste it on a guy who hasn't played baseball in 4 years. Or barely played baseball in 4 years. But yeah, there are some position player shots you can take, but the goal there the thinking there has to be like, we're going to try and work out a trade.
Also, real quick, Austin Shitten was protected. We know that the Mariners have had interest in bringing him back into their organization. That doesn't mean that the possibility of that is over. Like they could still trade for him for sure. But yeah, he will not be available in the Rule 5 draft, and of course they were not able to make a trade for him before the deadline. So,
right, and that doesn't really matter because Seattle would have the result is the same, right? Seattle either trades for him and puts him on their 40-man, or they just Tampa puts him on the 40-man and you trade for him, and it's the exact same situation. One thing I did want to point out real quick, because I did see some confusion on this, the Mariners added Blake Hunt to the 40-man roster the day they traded for him. So I think Pipeline has him listed as unprotected. That's not the case. He was already on the 40-man. That is why Zach DeLoach was the only player added to the 40-man, because Blake Hunt was already on it. So don't worry. They didn't trade for a guy who they're going to lose in the Rule 5 draft. They were ahead of the game on that one.
Yep. So it looks like the Mariners are going to have a new hitting coach, or at least it looks like they might be on the verge of landing a new hitting coach. We're going to be talking about that in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a whole lot more. And yeah, the Mariners might not be playing right now, but the Kraken and Seahawks are. So whether the action is on turf or on the ice, you can bet on it all with FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon, that's LOCKEDON, and kick off the NFL season. Again, that's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. So before we get out of here, we have a little bit of Mariners news to talk about, or some Mariners rumors. Craig Mish, the Marlins beat reporter, he's essentially the Ryan Divish in the Marlins world, is reporting that the Mariners are going to be interviewing, or maybe have already interviewed, Marlins hitting coach Brant Brown. So the interesting thing with Brown is that he used to be the Mariners minor league outfield and base running coordinator for a little while before he was hired by the Dodgers back in 2017. He was the Dodgers assistant hitting coach and minor league hitting coordinator until 2019, when he became the Dodgers hitting strategist. And obviously those Dodgers teams from 2019 to 2022, pretty good offensively. And then in 2022, he was hired as the hitting coach for the Marlins. And while they didn't grade out particularly well in terms of WRC plus, they were one of the highest average hitting teams in baseball. I think they were 4th in batting average, and obviously Luis Ariz was a big part of that. But this is something that Jerry DiPoto has alluded to. Tony Armrich is going to be moving on from being one half of the Mariners hitting coach duo that they've liked to employ over the last few years. He's going to be the bullpen coach, replacing Stephen Vogt, now that Stephen Vogt is going to be the manager of the Cleveland Guardians. So they want to find a new partner for Jarrett DeHart, and it looks like Brant Brown might be that guy. Mish did say that there would be a bigger role for him on the hitting side of things in Seattle if this were to happen. So maybe it's not necessarily just a strict partnership with DeHart like we've seen in years past. But it's interesting, and obviously Brown is someone that has a really nice track record when you look back on it. So Colby, the fans and the people in the comment section might actually get what they want and get a new hitting coach.
Yay. But if I'm going to get into the mind of the fans here, which I don't like to do because mostly gross, but let me throw this out there, because either you're going to think about this or you already have. Might the Mariners be hiring the hitting coach that gave Jorge Soler his best season in hopes of luring Jorge Soler to Seattle? Just saying, just throwing that out there. But yeah, we'll see what the larger role is.
Or Cody Bellinger.
Sure. Maybe. Yeah.
Brant Brown was the hitting strategist the year that Cody Bellinger won MVP. Just say.
I mean, Justin Turner. Everything is something.
Yep.
It's MLB offseason. Everything is something. But first of all, I mean, let's wait and see if they even hire the dude, or if he even takes the job is probably a more accurate way to phrase it. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see like what his larger role is. Is he, a bench coach, or is he just like the director of hitting strategy? Like, is it more of a front office role, or is it a
Right. Is it something that also bleeds into the minor leagues? That's kind of what I'm interested in here. Is it strictly a major league position,
Right.
or is it more of like an overarching thing?
Right. And we know Seattle has really dipped into development of hitters recently. You look at who replaced Andy McKay. It was it Justin Toole. Now it looks like they're going to go out and add another really highly regarded offensive mind to the at least to the coaching staff, maybe the front office. We'll see. Again, we'll have to wait and see if there is a role here for him, what it is, what the official title is, and what they have in mind for him. But yeah, it's I don't know. It's the same thing. Like, remember when Edgar got hired to be the hitting coach? People were like, "Oh, this solves the Mariners' hitting problems." It's always about the players, guys. It's always about the players. So, cool. I mean, it's nice to see the Mariners linked to anybody, even if it is just a coach. But based on how slow the offseason's been so far across the league, then yeah, just to see your team mentioned for a person who seems to be held in high regard across the game, like, cool, I guess I'll take it. But ultimately, I don't care what his role is.
Do we think the whole market is being held hostage by whatever Ohtani does? Like, is everyone just like waiting?
God, I hope not, because that'd be so stupid of the market in general.
Right, and also like
why would
don't feel like Ohtani is going to decide anytime soon. Like, that feels like a late December, maybe even January type of thing.
But also, like, if you're like the Detroit Tigers or whatever, and you have no shot at Ohtani, why would you let his market hold up anything? Because Ohtani is such a unicorn that, like, there's no other free agent that can look at that and be like, "That's the deal I want."
Yeah, it's not like he's setting the market. Like, he is his own market.
Right. It's not like Michael Wacha waiting to see what Sonny Gray signs for, or Lucas Giolito waiting to see what Sonny Gray signs for. Like, no, he is his own market. He's special.
Do we have a question of the day? I don't really have one. Do you have one?
I can offer you a question that plays off of yesterday's question, but I don't know if we want to do a Marvel question 2 days in a row.
Whatever. There was some heated debate down in the comments yesterday.
Yeah,
I don't know if
I didn't see the debate. I saw a few people throw their and hey, but guess what? If you don't like comic book movies, that's fine. Don't leave a comment.
Yeah, I saw some Martin Scorsese's down in the comments yesterday.
Real cinema. It's like, okay, cool. Take your opinions and take them to someone else. But here's your question of the day, Ty, and this might be news to you, might not. Heavily rumored right now that Marvel is closing in on a Reed Richards actor, and it's heavily rumored to be Pedro Pascal. Let us know what you think about that down in the comments, or if you want like a real question, if you want a different question of the day. We're glitching out. If you want a real question of the day, I'll give you this. Which fast food restaurant has the best fries?
McDonald's. Not even close.
Well, you let us know down in the comments. Can anybody unseat McDonald's?
That's going to do it for our show. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez, that's DANEGNZLZ, and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. And thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.